great to be here. I see some familiar and some unfamiliar faces, so glad to see you all. First off, this is great because I can see you. I would like this to be a fluid conversation. It's a little harder when I start sharing my screen, but feel free when you want to speak to unmute, and we can do it popcorn style. Happy to take questions as they come up. So let's just make this interactive if we can. And before I get started, I'm just curious if you all have anything particular, any particular challenges that you're having getting through ATS, what you hope to learn today. Really would like to hear some of your comments on that. So the big one is the black hole, right? You're all familiar with that. Is there a general agreement that that's a challenge to get through? Okay. Okay. Yeah. How many people have difficulty knowing exactly what job title they're targeting? You can just raise your hand. I can kind of see on the screen. Okay. All right, that gives me an idea of where we're starting from. Great, let me open up my presentation. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. And okay, perfect. So now I can't see it anymore, but some of you may not have heard of personal SEO. And those of you who have been marketing and sales, maybe you know the term search engine optimization. And it's basically the idea of how do you get found, how do businesses get found through Google, through the big search engines, through YouTube, however people get found when somebody is going to look for problems needing to be solved. We're all very much used to this idea when it comes to companies. So let's take a look. Okay, so my husband's an HVAC guy, and that really guy concentrating on the right is my husband. And what's really cool about him is he is a complete geek about all things home efficiency and energy efficiency related. And that is him installing an energy efficient hot water heater that he'd been dreaming about for 5 years. It takes the hot water and through some magic converts, uses some sort of thing. He's explained it to me 12 times, I have no idea, but air conditioning comes out the top that is generated as a result of the creation of heat from the hot water heater. So by adding it into our house, he's reduced our air conditioning bills, makes him really happy. He's a geek about it. So cool. He's a total geek about it. On the left is his company. Now, Service Wizard is a heating and air conditioning HVAC company. They have a great reputation. So those are the two guys, the brothers that own it. They've been in the business all of their lives. When you have a broken HVAC, it is a very expensive proposition. It is at least an $8,000 to $10,000 expense. It's one of the most expensive repairs on a home. So before you are going to make any kind of a decision, typically what we do in 2020 is we Google. And what we want to see when we Google is good reviews, smiling people, a company history, some suggestion that this isn't just anybody who's going to come in and, you know, do a quick repair or recommend something that doesn't work and leave. So when we're Googling, we are looking for, this is our first hit on a reputation. We want to know what their reputation is, and we're going to ask friends, but inevitably then we're going to Google. And it is the same thing with people who are thinking about hiring you. When it's time to hire an employee, it is one of the most expensive and risky decisions a company makes. So before you pull out your wallet and contract with my husband, because he is the sales representative for an HVAC system, you're going to make sure you've done your homework on their company, and hopefully on him that he's the knowledgeable person that he appears to be. Same thing with companies. They're going to do that on you in 2020 before they spend the money. Hiring is a risky thing that companies do. So I know recruiters get a bad rap, and there are things that are frustrating, and recruiters are frustrated with too, particularly the ghosting. They don't like it. It is a thing that happens, but neither party likes it. Employers, the prospective employees don't like it, and recruiters don't like it either. It is a factor of too much noise, and we have to figure out how to get through the noise. But recruiters will tell me, and I've asked them, you know, and I hear this from job seekers all the time, if someone would just give me a chance, I know I can do this job. Well, recruiters aren't in the business of giving people a chance. Companies are not in the business of giving people a chance any more than if somebody knocked on your door and said, hey, I can repair your HVAC, and they've got a truck with no markers and no credentials, and you don't have any association with them at all. It's too much of a risk. You're not going to do business that way. So if you can think of a recruiter's perspective, hiring manager's perspective from this kind of a perspective, then your goal is to help them reduce their risk. Okay, so if you've done your job with your marketing materials, your resume, your LinkedIn, also stretches to networking conversations and interviewing conversations, you are showing people these things, that you're committed, and this is your keyword piece that to a target, we'll speak to targets. You sound logical, so part of keywords are going to play into sounding logical. Seeming friendly and genuine, communicating value, keywords are very much a part of that, and showing what makes you different. That is the goal of what happens when somebody searches for somebody who's like you, who solves the problems that their company needs solved. They want to land on a profile where they are developing some trust. And that is up to you to give them a way to land there. So I have been collecting recruiter quotes for a long time, and I have even more than this. But except for the top person, these are all local Austin recruiters. I'm sure Kevin knows some of them. So Dawn Graham, who's one of my favorite career experts, she says, match first, stand out second. So your job is to be a match. That's your first job. And we'll talk about match to what. And guess what? Dan Medlin, who also says the same thing, be as precise a match as possible. Will Thompson, look at the job description. There are going to be key things. The wording must be similar. So we're talking about keywords. Laura, she says, why would we hire you for a staff accountant when you applied to be a financial analyst? Those are two very different types of positions, but I see all the time people, you know, think they're in the realm and they apply for different positions, but that creates an issue. And then I've got these 3 things I'm looking for. Lori Holzman, tell me why you're a match. So 3 things, tell me why you match those 3 things. And this is so important in interviews too. I'm always asking recruiters, and I love to talk to third-party recruiters because they get real pain when their candidate doesn't get picked, because they get paid on whether or not you, if they're working with you, get hired. And so you can get coaching from third-party recruiters for an interview. And I asked one, and I said, what would you wish that people didn't do when they're on an interview? And he said, well, he says, I've coached them. I told them that the company needs these 3 things, and you need to show them that you need to show them that you're really great at those 3 things. He said, but people talk about those 3 things, and then they go to the 6 other things that they're also really good at. That's a lot of things for people to remember, particularly in an interview. But again, so even in an interview, those keywords, those things that they're looking for, so important to be a match. So a lot of times what happens though is that really we're not driving this. We don't know what our personal SEO looks like, and we're not being very strategic about it. And I can say, as a professional resume writer, I can make all of the pretty words. I mean, I'm a writer. I can make things look really pretty, But if you are not, if the resume doesn't have a strategy behind it, all my pretty words won't matter. I actually will not take work if the person isn't really targeted, because I know that I can't write them an effective resume. And for some of you, if you're sending out resumes and getting few results, it may be a problem of not being targeted or not being a match. So also the goal with personal SEO is if you're not in control of your personal professional SEO, they're going to Google you, they're going to search for you, they're going to look for you on LinkedIn. They may find something bad, you know, outright bad. I had somebody say that they were Googling for someone and they found this person brandishing their knife collection, and it made them a little bit nervous. That maybe falls in the category of not the first thing you want to pop up when you're job searching. But second in the category, you know, political and religious beliefs. And you know, I'm here, I'm a Christian, I lead with my faith and I lead with my heart, but it's not always the first thing you want to lead with when you're in a professional job search. Just as all things in this world, people have very strong opinions, and what we're focusing on is helping them see that we're the person who can solve the problems that we solve. So if they Google you and the first thing that pops up, even if it's allegiance to a particular sports team and not your professional identity, that may not be the best thing that you want them to land on first. And then the third thing is kind of what I would call the ho-hum or the boring or the sleepy, that they may find you, but you're not really exciting them because you're not hitting the right keywords, you're not showing them the problems that they need to solve. The really fun thing about this is recruiters get a bad rap, and I think James is actually on the call today, but it was a conversation with James, and he's a recruiter that made me really, he says he gets excited when he finds something good by Googling somebody that he can take to a company. And the reason recruiters get into this business, almost overwhelming, it's just like any other profession, but overwhelmingly, they're people. They get excited when they can match a great person and they're the right fit for a job. That excites them. That's why they do what they do. Would you agree with that, Kevin? I think he's on there.
James.
Oh, Kevin and James. James and Kevin are both recruiters.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, James is the one who told me, so that's not my idea, it's his idea. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to tell people that because that's absolutely true. Kevin, is that your experience as well?
Absolutely. Both externally and internally, I love it when somebody can tell me about a story about something or highlight something that I don't already know about. It draws your attention.
Yeah, and even cooler when you're doing a Google search and you land on, hey, look at this presentation. You know, I think that's the example that James gave me. It's exactly what we need. So that's the kind of reaction you want to get. A recruiter friend of mine says recruiting comes with sound effects. It's like, yes, you know, and you know from those sound effects whether or not they're excited. And of course, you don't see this side, but that's the part that people don't always realize. They see recruiters as gatekeepers and obstacles when really they're just dying to connect you. They really do want you to succeed. So here's the problem, and part of the ways that, you know, we hear about ghosting. So here are some of the things that get in the way. With personal SEO, there are two kinds of ghosting, and one is that you just don't exist online, right? You don't exist. Like, you can Google your name and nothing can come up. And this is a problem because according to a 2018 survey, and the recruiters on the call can pipe in if they agree, but 47% say if they can't find someone online, they're less likely to call that person in an interview. Now, does that mean you need to be on every single social media? No, but it means that when you're Googled, that your professional profile comes up, and that it comes up with you being the person that you say you are on your resume professionally. But it can happen that you're just ghosted because you have a really common name and you're not findable online. So either you don't exist online, or you could have a common name where you're not findable online. And that actually happened to me. I didn't realize this. Cara Bell is a very, very common name. There's a sports writer named Cara Bell. Anyway, it's a common name. I had no hope of owning the search engine, top page of Google with my name. I had to try a few different combinations of my name, and I settled on Cara D. Bell. And now when people refer me, they find me. Your name is the most important piece of content that you have, and you really want it to be memorable and findable in your job search, and make it really easy. So people who put very confusing contact information where they use initials on their email and then their second name with the first initial, like it gets confusing. People don't know what to call you or how to search for you. So if you can make it all consistent, that really, really helps. Is it important to you, Kevin, to be able to find people online?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, leading a team internally, one of the first things the recruiters do, and I'm sure James can speak to it as well, is we do a search. I'll type the name in parentheses in Google and see what pops up. I'll go into images and just see what they do. I think a lot of recruiters do that. So definitely very important to find out where you are and how you're positioned on the web.
Yeah, and the great thing about having a professional identity is if you have shown up in other places, like you have a common name and you've shown up in other places, or you have like other internet activities, either a side business or something else that isn't consistent with your professional brand, then you can create a professional stage name, so to speak, and use that. And by doing that and using that on your resume, you are controlling your professional brand. So we want to be in charge of this. And it's super important. I see Darren raise his hand. Darren, go ahead.
Hi, I think I got my sound working. Can you hear me?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, video is my next project. But for right now, for you, Kevin, and James, I would ask if you see the person's name is common, say mine, for example, and would you just search the name, or would you, if you have their LinkedIn profile, would you use the whole name? Like I put the W in my name for that. But if you don't search with the W, you come up with this really cool rapper guy. I mean, he's much more attractive than I am, but he's certainly not me. So how do you deal with situations like that if you try the name and it comes up with someone who's obviously not who you're looking for?
Well, Kevin, I'll pitch that question to you or to James because you've got it from the recruiter's perspective. How do you handle that?
James, you want to take point?
Sure. Well, I mean, obviously if I have your LinkedIn profile, then I have your LinkedIn profile, but like, like Kara said earlier, there definitely are, it's kind of a, sort of a, what am I trying to say? Sort of a, not a treasure hunt, but a like a scavenger hunt. I mean, which may sound like a weird analogy, but you got to, or fitting different pieces of a puzzle together. I mean, if a person has a really, really, common name, John Smith or whatever, then I'm necessarily going to look for other, identifiers. If I know that John Smith lives in, Austin, Texas, and went to Texas A&M or whatever, I mean, I'm going to start looking for those kinds of things. But back to this quote, I mean, personally, I don't necessarily think it's a disadvantage, I'm sure that Kara is not suggesting that John Smith or whatever change his name or anything, but yes, it certainly can be challenging in those cases, but I think what Kara mentioned, how she addressed that problem with her own name is a good way to go. But again, I haven't found that to be an insurmountable problem, I guess, is my bottom line. What about you, Kevin?
Yeah, thanks for that insight. For example, I just typed in my name in quotes in Google, and I was the first. My LinkedIn came up first, so that's good, right? So I'll be found. But then there's 7 other people that are named Kevin Togus, and when I pulled it up in Google, they're all different. And there's one guy I might not want to be associated with, and there's a couple of other people I'm like, all right, I can work with that, right? So how do I create a differentiator? I might put my middle name in so that I can be a little bit more distinct. And you can do that if you really want. So I just say play with the internet, kind of find out what's out there about yourself, and then make a decision on how you wanna do it. It took me a while, and I think every recruiter, everybody, it takes a while to build a profile on LinkedIn, so that you can be found. But once you find that differentiator or that unique value proposition, kind of that thing that differentiates you, go with it and just kind of make it your own.
Yeah. Thank you both.
I think the quote is right. I'd also say it's whether the recruiter or not is interested, right? There are very lazy recruiters out there that will take one stab at it, and if they can't find it or it didn't come up, they're on to the next thing, right? But then there's like James or myself that are going to maybe dig a little bit and take it one step further and see if we can match you up, to a background or an experience or something. We may take 3 or 4 steps to try to figure that out. So,
right.
And that's a great insight for me, because as I'm listening to you all talk, I'm thinking even more like, isn't it great if we can make it easy for them? Because one thing I've learned from recruiters is that their job is very, very fast paced. They are not often recruiting just for one. I mean, they're rarely recruiting just for one. They're recruiting for multiple positions. And so to hear them both talk and that they'll do some digging and do this, isn't it cool if you can make their job easier? And one way you can do it is by playing around with the different ways you can put an initial next to your name and then use that across all of your online properties. And that was actually a tip that I got from a marketing and personal branding expert. And I'll share with you, his talk is on the JSN website. His name is Rusty Shelton. Really, really worthwhile talk if you have a chance to listen to it. So thank you both for that perspective. Really helpful. Okay. So for people who say, well, I don't want a LinkedIn profile, I think we're really getting past that point, particularly in Austin. LinkedIn is where recruiters are. I can understand not wanting to be on social media. I don't like Facebook. I don't do a lot of social media. And I'm a mom with 3 kids and working, and things can be time sucking. So I understand that perspective, and I understand privacy issues, but LinkedIn has good SEO, and it's a great place to establish your personal brand. Applicant tracking systems, y'all know about this. For those of you who don't, these are the systems that your resume goes through when you apply for a job. We talk about the black hole your resume goes in, and you may never hear from anybody. It is being filtered by a whole bunch of systems. The slide is a little old. There are new ones that are more relevant. But here's what I was saying about LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is where the recruiters are. It's where we also want to be. These are statistics according to Forbes, and there's been several research done by lots of different career organizations. 71% more likely to get interviews with a comprehensive LinkedIn profile. So what's driving this need for keywords is the applicant tracking system and LinkedIn. But people think that this is something new and it's something different, but the need to be clear and specific about who you are goes back to truly, this is you can go to job search, and I'll give you an example of job searching back in, the 1950s, where it's still very much applied. And I'll talk to you about that in a second. So the big areas that we're looking at we talked about your name as part of your keyword. Job titles are huge, skills or tools, and location. Now, this is kind of funny because prior to COVID, and I'm waiting to see how this new environment is going to change, there are a lot of companies who are now open to remote work who hadn't been previously open to remote work before. So the word remote may become a location, but typically there's a bias for recruiters that you want to hire people within their own community and not worry about someone relocating who doesn't already live there. Okay, so for those of you who are still figuring out what you want to do, and that's why you have trouble getting targeted, and it all depends on how much runway you have. And so some people have time and they can do some soul searching and some career searching to make a transition. So when you want to do a completely new transition, the length of search, generally, there's always exceptions, can be longer. So when I talk about a strategic approach to your job search, this is also what I'm talking about. If you want to do a totally new industry and a totally new job title change, you may need more training or education. You may need to jump back into entry-level work where before you'd been more senior. You may need some time to volunteer to gain experience. That can be a longer search. If you don't have a lot of runway, as I did not, when I got divorced in the middle of the recession back 10 years ago, then as a mom of 3, I needed to be employed very, very quickly. So the most strategic place for me to go is, and I had been a stay-at-home mom for a long time, so it was a challenge, but the same job title and the same industry, that is going to be kind of the quickest and easiest. Of course, there are exceptions, but I always look at, what is going to be most likely strategically. Same job title, same industry. Why? You're reducing the company's risk. If they've known you've done this job title before in the industry that they're in, they don't have to ramp you up as much as somebody who might be coming in from a different industry or a different job title. Also, to play to that, this is kind of a strategy that I use when people need to decide really quickly. And I look for the Venn diagram of what work will the market support. So that's where you really need to do your research. What work do you enjoy most? So we want you to be interviewing, and when you're interviewing, talking about things that you love, because that passion is infectious, right? You can't, if you're talking about things you really enjoy, people can't help but pick it up. If you're talking about things you don't enjoy, then it's hard to come across as passionate and excited about your work. So that's important. And then what work have you done in the last 10 to 15 years? Really, your recent experience is going to be the most relevant. There are some exceptions. I talked about being a stay-at-home mom, but that can include paid and unpaid work. So volunteer experience that is recent, even if it's unpaid, is still experience. And you can look at it that way on your resume. So I look at the intersection of all these things, and there's ways to do some keyword research to support that. So one tool I love is just a Boolean search using the Google job tool. And I am gonna take a step back for a moment here. And would anybody like to volunteer to give me their job title? Who's maybe needs to get a little bit more targeted? What job title are y'all searching on? We'll just do a quick little demonstration.
Me.
Okay, I didn't see who was speaking. Oh, Annie.
That's
Was
me.
that you? Awesome.
Hi. Yes,
Hey, Annie.
sure.
Okay, so let's look at yours. Oh, project management, right?
Yes.
Okay, so project management exists in all kinds of industries and all kinds of, so different. I've worked with
It's
project
like,
managers who are in construction, very different than a project manager in tech. So let's do this. So we do jobs, project manager. And I love this Google tool because it aggregates from LinkedIn, it aggregates from lots of places across the internet, and I use it for keyword research and also for targeting research. So now I'm looking, you're a project manager. And Annie and I, we just happened to talk earlier. She's not a ringer, but we happened to talk earlier, and she has project management experience in the hotel industry, but in the technical hotel industry. She was working with, what were their HomeAway and
HomeAway Verbo. It's travel.
yeah, so it's travel, and obviously travel's taking a hit now. So when we talk industry, based on that diagram, we're talking travel. So now I just pulled up project management jobs, and you want to see 100 more jobs. It's geolocating for things that are close to you. So I'm in South Austin. And now I can really start browsing. And if I go up here, I can look at all the different industries that project management can be in. And I'm really going to look for the intersection of where my experience, so my industry. So we talked about travel. Well, travel is not doing so well right now. But then we talked about the, you had a phrase that you used, e-commerce or something, Annie, that
it was software as a service.
So
yeah.
SaaS and e-commerce. So there are other technical industries, there are other industries where her experience can be a crossover. So that's what she's looking for. She's looking for that intersection between companies similar to the ones that she came from with the experience similar to what she did. And she can browse these job descriptions. So I really encourage you to do this, not just to look for jobs. This is even before you write your resume. I just want you to get familiar with the keywords, because even if you have an internal referral, if you're not a keyword match, that's not great for the machines, because a lot of companies still require you to have a certain percentage on their ATX, even with an internal referral, that you still need to meet their requirements. So you need to be a keyword match, but also you want to attract people to you instead of just you being the one to initiate all the conversations. And before I write a resume, I will find 3 to 5 representative job descriptions. I use this to do my research, and I'm going to pull them all together. I actually print them out and I highlight them. I'm going to pull my slideshow back up again. Thank you for volunteering, Annie. I'm going to pull them back up again and show you. Here we go, from current slide. So I really just start highlighting keywords across all of them. And I'm looking for things that they have in common. So right now I'm not looking, I'm going to apply to this. I'm looking for 3 to 5 representative job descriptions that fit that 3-circle diagram that I was talking about. Your experience, last 15 years, things you like, and the market research that you're doing through this process. And I'm going to start making lists of the most common keywords that I see. And that is the basis for which I write my master resume. 3 to 5 job descriptions with similar industries, similar job titles, and those become the basis for when I start writing. Now I'm going to pop off and show you on a resume where some of these keywords come in. This is our JSN resume template. And this is the do-it-yourself template that over 50 Austin recruiters were kind enough to help us come up with. The thing about resume writing is there's best practices, but there really are no rules. That's why you can give it to 10 different people and they'll give you 10 different opinions. And my recruiter says, I know what I like when I like it, but I can't describe to you what that looks like. But some things that we know are important to them, and this is where the option for the keywords come in. I've kind of highlighted it. Can you all see this pretty well? Okay, cool. I have to, here we go.
I do want to say though that this was actually not a template. It was just a Word document, just FYI. Because after we talked, I went at it.
Okay, it's a Word document that you can edit into. I maybe.
It was a little funky to.
Oh, okay.
Use.
Well, it is downloadable.
I made it work.
Okay, I'm glad you made it work. So the job title target piece here, and again, this isn't necessarily the end-all be-all template, but it is one that has some features for the keywords that I'm pointing out. The job title or target. So, you know, a lot of us know that the old objective we're not using anymore, but I can't tell you how many resumes I see that say things like sales leader. Well, sales leader is not a job title. now, are you a sales manager? Are you a territory manager? Are you an individual contributor? So that could be anything. So if you've got your 3 to 5 job descriptions, ideally you also have the most common titles that people who are looking for a U search for, because recruiters don't search on the word leader. They search on job titles and skills that they're looking for. So a job title or target at the top, you have a chance to put the highest priority keywords in the job description. So we don't want you to have to do a ton of work every time you submit a resume, but it absolutely, like from the slide in the front, it needs to be a match. It definitely needs to be a match. So this gives you a quick and easy chance. If you've got a PMP and that's what they want, then you make sure it's in there. If you have an MBA, put it right at the top. That's what they want. So those kind of hard skills that are high priority for them, if you got them, they're front and center. Another place that people don't realize is a great option for keywords is in a description of the company. So we talked about Annie coming from the travel industry. Well, most people know HomeAway and they're going to associate it, and the other one with, like, you know, the Airbnb and those kinds of things. But if your company has sells into a similar client base, or it's a similar size as the future looking company, then by describing your company with the keywords that your future company is looking for, you're showing, you're being logical and showing them the synergy between your previous company and their company. So this is a missed opportunity in a lot of people's resumes. Okay, job titles also. I used to be director of communications for a small family-run finance company. If I went to Dell or Whole Foods and applied to be director of communication, they'd laugh at me because I certainly don't have that level of experience working in that size of a company. It's a very different type of job. So job titles don't mean much. And I would say that the resume is a marketing document, not a legal document. So let's say you're going for an HR role and you had been an office manager, but you want to go into HR and be an HR generalist. Well, if as an office manager, your official title was office manager, then, but you did a lot of payroll and HR work, then you could focus on that HR part of your job and use that title, even if it's only 20% of what you did. That's all you need to highlight. So keywords need to be relevant and match what you're saying your future looking job is. And ideally, you have the experience. You've done the payroll, you've done the functions. Another opportunity for keywords, sometimes people say, well, what if my experience 20 years ago matches? Well, if you have chronologically the first 10 to 15 years of experience, then you can have a section, this is an alternate ending, that says earlier relevant experience. You don't have to show that it was 30 years ago or 20 years ago, but if you have the keywords that are a match and you have the company experience that was a match. I forget who it was I was talking to today who previously worked for, actually, I think it was you working for Mattel, and you know, if you were applying for a toy company and you have a toy company in your history, but it's before that 10 to 15 years, well, you can put it on the earlier relevant experience. Also with keywords, if they write out bachelor's degree in business administration, then use that convention on your resume. And I'm going to jump back up to the slides to talk about that a little bit more. So in keywords, we want to look at 3 things: diversity, density, and relevancy. So diversity is the variation. So you've got your 3 to 5 representative jobs. You've got your variations of keywords. So senior sales, a senior territory manager can be written senior, or it can be written senior. LinkedIn gives you lots of options for doing this. You've got a fully optimized LinkedIn profile can be somewhere around 46 pages compared to 1 to 3 pages for a resume. You've got a lot more words for those keyword variations, and you can use them in LinkedIn. The different titles, outside sales versus territory manager. Think about all the different titles for your industry, do the research and find them. And then you want to look at density, use them throughout your profile, and use only the ones relevant to your future target and let go of others that don't match. One example I can give is I worked with someone who had been she was a counselor, she was a therapist. And on her resume, her most recent experience, she had the opportunity to live in Costa Rica and actually it was travel operations work with a company like HomeAway, kind of that sort of company. And she loved it way more than she did one-on-one counseling. And she wanted to she loved the startup world, but her resume, because so much of her experience was in counseling, there is no way she could be a keyword match. So she could send her resume in, and they're gonna, and even people she shared it with, are you a counselor or are you in operations for a startup? I can't figure this out. It didn't make logical sense. Well, when I interviewed her, I found out that even when she was a counselor, she was so good at operations and systems that she created a whole system for billing Medicare, Medicaid, I can't remember which one it was. But most counselors don't do that because most counselors are not into paperwork, and a lot of counselors don't even take insurance. She got so good at it that she started training other people. So she was an operations person even when she was a counselor. And by looking at her experience through that lens, and people tend to have patterns throughout their career like this, it actually is really cool because you can see, wow, the reason I'm applying to this job is because I'm really good at this stuff. And it makes you feel more confident too, to have a resume that is loaded with the right keywords that show you're solving the problems that you like to solve and that the company needs you to solve. So that's a relevancy example. So in LinkedIn, here's an example of how keywords are deployed and used. Your headline is one of the most indexed pieces on LinkedIn, and most people have the default, I was this title at this company. Remember I said it hasn't changed much in 50 years? Well, my grandparents, and I'll make this story shorter than I normally tell it, but they ran a bar. And after World War II, they didn't think they could get pregnant. And 10 years after they got married, they got pregnant with my dad. And my grandfather said, I'm not raising my children in a bar. So they wanted to sell the bar. And they had been doing this for their whole career. And my grandmother, she was the head manager, and she also used to, my grandmother had a great spirit. She was a lot of fun. So she'd take care of all the rowdy soldiers who would come in. She could handle people who had too much alcohol. She was like the front person, but she was also a really fantastic cook. So if she were on LinkedIn today and she went with the default owner, bartender, and chef at Diamond Cafe, that's what she does. But it also shows her, and there are a lot of people who are going from either freelance work or independent employee work and they want to go work for a company. Well, this is showing her as a company owner, right? So if she wants to go work for somebody else, there's a disconnect with that story. Already people are questioning, well, why do they want to come work for a company if they're used to owning a business? And there's a lot of questions there. So these are not logical keywords. When they decided, they sold the bar and they didn't get a lot of money for the bar, so they had to go back and jump in to working again. Well, if she had a keyword loaded headline, here's what it would look like. Food service and kitchen manager, head chef, health department certified cook, homemade meatballs for the masses. Okay, of course, LinkedIn didn't exist in the 1950s. But if I was going to write my grandmother's profile, this is what I would do for her headline if she was going to get to be reemployed. Because what happens is you get credit for every combination of keywords that is in this 120 characters. So she would get credit for certified chef. She would get credit for kitchen manager, or all the different combinations. Cook, health department, food certified, health department. She gets it all. These are the keywords that people who are looking for her are looking for. Well, ultimately, she did get a job managing the kitchen at the high school in town, because there's not much difference between managing lunch at a bar after people have been drinking and managing teenagers. So she was really good at that, right? But she knew she was really good at it. She marketed it, And there you go. That's how I'd write her LinkedIn heading. Same thing. There's lots of opportunities on your LinkedIn job title to load the keywords. So instead of writing whatever your company decided you were, a marketing rock star, if you happen to work for a startup, you would use the actual most common titles for your job. Another place is in skills and endorsements. So for a while, LinkedIn wasn't really doing a whole lot with this, and now they have become more meaningful on LinkedIn. And this is a perfect example of where I made a mistake. I hadn't paid any attention to my old endorsements. People endorsed me. I had no idea that I even had them. And then people would go in to endorse me for resume writing. The only thing I had available in my top skills was editing, so they endorsed me for that. But I'd like to be endorsed for resume writing and instructor-led training. So by me curating these with the keywords that people are searching for, I'm going to get better results in terms of people searching and finding me. So yeah, ultimately, here's what my grandmother's LinkedIn profile would look like if she were marketing today. I'd have a better picture, but okay. So I know we're coming to the end of an hour, and there are some examples that I could show you if we pop on, but I do want to show you that you can go to jsnatx.org. This is Rusty Shelton's talk. He is the one who talks about personal branding, and that's a great webinar if you can find it on the JSN website. Are there any questions at the moment?
Kara,
Yeah, Sarah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of touched on this when we talked earlier today about the resume versus LinkedIn, and then the different ways to say VP, Vice President, ABM, account-based marketing, white paper as one word, or white paper.
Mm-hmm.
And like LinkedIn, it sounds like you can use, variations of it. And then how do you kind of?
Yeah, so LinkedIn, you have tons of room. You can go into your about section and use the keywords there. Then in each of your experience section, and there's 2,600 characters in the about section, and in each of your experience section, you can reinforce that. So LinkedIn, you can create a more global profile that kind of covers those 5 to 6 to 10. And all of this is a work in progress.
Right.
This is you becoming educated about your career and your skills and what you're known for, and aligning that with what the market wants. You're not going to hit it out of the park the first try. It gets adjusted and tweaked, and after you get your job, you're going to tweak this throughout your career. I will tell you this, we talked about being targeted, and certainly Kevin can speak to this more, but that is the preference in the field, that we want to see that you can do the things that we're asking you to do. So on a resume, you want to adjust to the words that they're specifically requesting. On a LinkedIn profile, you can be more global.
And on the resume, tailoring it to exactly how they're doing it. If it's SR period.
Now the algorithms are getting better. Ideally the machines are gonna start to look to pick up the differences between those things. But for now, yeah, that's a safe thing to do it. Match it to the conventions that they use. I don't know if you can speak to that, Kevin or James, about how good they are at parsing out those different words, but.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's best to, right? If you're talking about senior, if you're gonna apply to a job that's SR dot project manager, then at the company, then it's more likely it's gonna get picked up if you do SR dot. But then you may want to add senior written out somewhere below when you're talking about things, just so you can pick up on that keyword as well. But yeah, if you're going after a particular position at a company, I would tailor it towards the way that's written.
Yeah, thank you. Other questions?
One quick one. One quick one, one not so quick. The quick one has to do with the address information you put at the top. I noticed you have Austin, Texas 78750 or whatever the zip code was. And I live in Pflugerville. Nobody's going to know where Pflugerville is unless you live here in Austin. So just wondering about how you handle things like that. Do I use 78660 in Austin?
We've had a lot of discussions about this. People used to drop it off. So the Austin metro area, Austin, Texas, it does not just have to be Austin proper, right? It's
Right.
Again, the resume is a marketing document. It's not a legal document. So if you want to work in Austin, Texas, put Austin, Texas. Whether you're in Pflugerville or Kyle, or it doesn't matter. And where it can matter is that applicant tracking systems, sometimes to narrow things down, recruiters will put in a zip code, just say within the 15 miles of where the job is located. So if you're willing to commute in Austin traffic, an hour and a half, that's cool, but just realize that, and there is research that shows that people who are closer geographically are more likely to stay. Some people will put the zip code in the center of where they want to work. I don't know if you can speak to that at all, Kevin.
Yeah, I think that it's recruiter by recruiter, right?
Yeah.
How they're going to search, but Kara's right. I think that you can put a zip code and you can base it off of how far. Some ATSs aren't that sophisticated, so you can't necessarily filter it by that. So it really just depended on the ATS system that a company has. Location is really a hard one.
Yeah.
People will discriminate against locations because they don't think somebody's going to take that job. And, I don't mind traveling an hour to an hour and 15-minute one way where somebody else might be a 15-minute commuter. So it is a question I ask every time I talk to somebody, though.
Yeah. Anecdotally, I was actually in the final minutes of an interview with the owner of a company for a good position. And he looked at the top of my resume, saw my zip code. The man literally, his eyes went wide and he went pale. He was like genuinely concerned about my health and safety because I might have a 30-minute drive. So, it does happen. I'm not going to say it's common, but I do notice that of all the places I've lived, people in Austin seem to have a higher level of traffic allergy than other places of the country. So it might be useful to be more targeted.
And this is, the whole, more open to remote thing. I'm interested to see what happens, in that world for the next 6 months to a year with that whole remote idea, because now a lot of companies are going, oh, I didn't think we could work remote. And guess what? We can. So it's always changing, but it's something to pay attention to. Kevin had just said that he asked that question, and one of our job seekers, you never know when you get a job what the thing was that did it, and it's anything and everything and nothing. And that recruiter asked her the job, and he said, my favorite answer was, because she had a fairly long commute, was when you said, oh, I just got a brand new hybrid and I'm just so excited to be driving that car, and that was her answer, and it was positive and it was fun, and she got the job. So anyway, but yes, it can be a thing that is filtered through an applicant tracking system. Any other questions?
Okay. I also wanted to ask about the job title.
Mm-hmm.
I've got another generic job title, data analyst. That's one of the things.
Yeah.
And there's all different varieties of those. So is there any way, other than keywords, is there any way to identify where you fit out in the world, where there's about 5 or 6 different versions of those?
Yeah, so I've worked with data analysts who were data analysts in state and local and federal government, and I've worked with data analysts who were in tech companies. So where you can get more granular on what your experience and what your particular expertise is in, people think by staying broad that's going to give them more opportunities, when actually the reverse is true, that if you can find a niche that your resume really backs up and there's a need for people in that niche, then that's a great target for you to market to. So by adding industry, keywords can be like the type of companies that you work for. In this case, this person had really specific experience on, he just happened to do like data analyst work within all kinds of transportation departments for state and local governments. It's just a real niche thing, but there's not too many people with that experience. So it makes him really attractive in that arena. So it's finding out how, and that's by that research, some of that research I showed, what are people wanting in the market and what words can you use to show them that you've got all of that lined up. And sometimes it's company names, sometimes it's SLED is a keyword, state, local, education, you know, companies that you sell to, that the companies sell to, wherever there's similarities between your previous work and the work that you're going to do.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. How are we doing on time, Todd?
It's 7:36.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
I was on mute.
So you guys are moving into your conversation portion. So how
Yes.
do you?
Yeah, we're moving into that, but I mean that's good. Like what you know, as we think about the space, what is a good prompt for us to consider? You know, do you have a thought for that, Kara?
Well, one of the things that I would say is just what are the most common job titles that people, you know, so you think about the problems that you solve, and are you hitting the right job titles for the market? So HR business partner was a title that someone was going at, but in Austin, there are not too many opportunities that use that exact title. So my question would be, do you know the job titles for the people who are looking for you to solve their problems? What job titles are they looking for? Do you even know them? And could you make a list of them? That would be one area to start. And if you're having trouble getting targeted, then what's the obstacle? What's stopping you from doing that is another good question.
One thing to consider, and this I've gotten from Darren actually, is to take some of the jobs that you really love and put the word, I mean, just put copies of the job descriptions into word cloud, and the words will pop out.
Yeah, that's a great way to do it. Use word clouds. I like the highlighting method. You can get crazy with color coding.
Well, so what would you guys like? Would y'all like to just continue to consider this here in a larger group, or would you like us to give you some time to network a little bit with each other in a smaller group for about 20 minutes and consider this?
I'm going to have to jump out in about 10 minutes or less, so
Yeah.
I will abstain from voting.
Well, why don't we do, since we have a pretty large group today, why don't we let everybody kind of share, like you can share with each other sort of where you are, what your title is, and try it out and explore with that. Okay. And so we'll put like 20 minutes in. If people have to go, we understand, but this is a really good way to get some community and connect with people too. So I'm going to go ahead and open some rooms up and have some fun. This is Todd Boyum, and we hope you enjoyed this presentation of Fellowship Career Network. We meet every Monday evening from 6:30 to 8 p.m., and we hope you'll join us soon. To register and receive the Zoom link in your email, simply go to fellowshipcareernetwork.com today.